Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to day 3, the final day here at the Global Baku Forum. I'm joined, as always, by Anastasia Lavrina and Orkan Amashov. We're going to be reflecting on not just today's events, but everything that's happened here at the forum so far. Let's just refresh our memory about the topics that have been discovered today. Technology has been a very important area of discussion. Gender, of course, been discussed right the way through this event. Health, we've had a session today and a session yesterday. And then, of course, that very important continuing discussion on climate. How can governments, NGOs, all interested parties make sure that there is momentum between that important breakthrough in Baku and COP30 in Belém, Brazil? Before I ask you for your own reflections on the event, I just wanted to share something that I found very interesting from my interview with Dr. Sarah Geldin yesterday, and other people that I've spoken to too, who are vastly experienced leaders, diplomats. Dr. Sarah Geldin completed his PhD, his first PhD, 4 years before I was born. And yet, despite that vast experience, is very hopeful, very optimistic about some of the things that much younger people are actually very worried about. AI, the future of multilateralism. So for me, that was a really reassuring interview, because I got a sense that actually hope, positivity, looking towards the future, in areas where often there's a lot of negativity and a lot of anxiety. Orkan, can I start with you, your reflections on the event?
Yes, indeed. I mean, what a fantastic 3-day spell have we had. I mean, a number of panel discussions, important issues have been closely examined by people of great experience. Dr. Sarah Geldin, he completed his PhD in the year of Munich Olympics, of course. The man had been through many stages in his long, illustrious life. Of course, for him, the extent of danger, as I mentioned yesterday during our conversation, is not the same the way we perceive it, of course. And he has been through many stages. I think that what we observe at this juncture of human evolution is that, of course, what is very clear, the conflict is there. Conflict between competing powers, different blocs, it will remain. We will never have this unfettered cooperation, everybody agreeing on everything. But the point between the comparison and sort of comparative analysis involving conflict and conflicts of interest always is designed in such a way that conflict is limited by the resources of competing powers, and which is we're currently observing on the battleground in Ukraine, because they reached a level wherein it is impossible to support Ukraine's war effort to the extent it was supported before, so that the resources are limited, and then compromise should be found. So we're observing it there, and also it's a question of allocation of resources, because if you want to achieve something in the grand scheme of competition involving US and China, you have to sort of change your approach to the conflict in Ukraine. About artificial intelligence, that will be the defining feature of human civilization from now on. Quite frankly, who is in charge of that technology, who is able to use it properly, also, amongst other things, by means of limiting that negativity revolving around that incremental loss of human control over that technology will be on the winning side. I think that will define the future. But of course, there's a great deal to be hopeful about the future of human civilization, and I think that your interview with Dr. Sarah Geldin testified to that audacious hope.
Audacious hope. Anastasia, you've interviewed many dignitaries over the last few days. Any favourites, any highlights?
Well, I would like to share some highlights. Today in the morning, I had a very interesting interview with Susan Ness, who is a former US Federal Communications Commissioner, and she has a great experience to explain how the advancement of the AI, and she actually looks very helpful about the future. You know, these simple questions everybody, especially among the young generation, are asking: what about our future employment? Whether AI is going to steal it from us, and so how we'll deal with that issue. And actually, that's very interesting. The aged people, they are very much sure that we have a bright future with the AI technology to be developed, promoted, and sustained. It can actually simplify our life, without bringing, let's say, difficulties we cannot overcome with. So it was very interesting to know her broad experience and expectations from Azerbaijan. She persuaded me that there is still potential for close cooperation between the governments, United States, European countries, even between Azerbaijan and the regional powers, also on how to make sure that with AI advancement we also have the human rights protection, the protection of those who can have those fears I mentioned before. And she was also very much impressed by the development of AI here in Baku, in Azerbaijan itself. And she said that it's very nice for the development of tourism industry, as it helps to simplify the visa procedure, which helps the tourists to travel any destinations they want. And yesterday I also had a very interesting discussion with Mr. Hikmet Çetin, who is a former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey. He took his position in the beginning of 19th, very tough time for our region, when the first Karabakh war on its active phase and the countries were trying to reach an agreement or to decide how to proceed. It was a time when part of Azerbaijani lands already been occupied by modern Armenia. And it's interesting, I asked him whether it was possible to have any kind of deal or agreement at that time. And he said that unfortunately there was some kind of negotiations, but it couldn't last long. That's why we had all of those 30 years of occupation, which finally ended in 2020 in result of the Second Karabakh War. So it's really nice to meet here the people who had a valid experience, who had an experience to compare what we had in the 19th or even before. You yourself say that in your speech, in your conversation with Mr. Sarıgeldin, you realized that he had his PhD before you were born. So he is the one who
4 years before.
4 years before, indeed. So
thank you for that important qualification.
So it's important to ask his opinion, how he sees the changes in the world. As my colleague previously mentioned, there is still competition between the powers, and we cannot have them all to agree on all the developments, all the issues, the conflicts we have in the world today. Doesn't matter whether it's Middle East, the conflict in Ukraine, the situation between the United States and the European Union at the moment, Trump's tariff plan, and etc. The future of energy development, you mentioned COP29, COP30, green energy transition, but still we have some leaders who rely on energy, fossil fuels, like Mr. Donald Trump is saying that, we all remember his keywords, he said drill baby drill. So what is the future of energy in our world? But still, I can see that they are sure the countries who are rich with fossil fuels like Azerbaijan will play a key role in the smooth transition to renewables. Therefore, I guess it was indeed very interesting forum we had within the last 3 days. It allows us to listen to the opinion of the participants from different parts of the globe, their vision of the situation, and even though some of them are not in power at the moment, they're former ambassadors, presidents, but still their experience is very much valid for all of us to understand the situation on the ground, to decide to where we are moving at the moment.
Yeah, Orkan, incredible breadth and depth of issues covered. Let's just say a couple of words about the organisers, the NGIC. Incredible amount of work gone in, and a really fascinating organisation.
Indeed, yes, and I've been able to have attended a couple of editions of this forum. I attended 2022 one, 2023 one, even I believe 2021. Of course, here the key and organisers have done absolutely remarkable job in terms of ensuring this fundamental purpose, objective, which is to be a platform for change, to be a change maker, because what is happening around the world is revolving around those linchpins, which we call cumulatively change. There are two options that you could actually utilize. One is actually you are being reactive, something is happening beyond your control somewhere else, and that change comes to your region after a couple of years, and you are adapting to that. It's one way of evolving yourself. The second way, which is a more proactive way, you are part of the change yourself. You're leading the debate. I think the Baku Global Forum testifies in general to Azerbaijan's desire to be involved in this global debate, not just an observant, of course, but as a participant involved in making that change. But quite often what happens is that once you are part of that decision-making process that leads to change, you do not need to adapt to that change because you are part of that change yourself. It increases your clout, it gives rise to your perception of your own worth, your own self, and you feel more integrated with the rest of the world. I think that this organization and its activities testify to that very clear understanding of the necessity of leading the debate. But if you're not going to lead the debate, you're going to be subservient, and being subservient and subjugated to something else over there is not a nice proposition. As Anastasia mentioned earlier, of course, competition is eternal. We always compete with each other. It's all about the rules of the game, and rules of the game could be established in a couple of ways. Of course, for example, let's say we are gathering together as a congregation, we're trying to chart new rules, we draw up them, and then we abide by those rules. This does not really work in real life in many ways. There are usually those key actors which define the agenda, and there are actors of lesser importance who are also involved in this process. What we observed over the past 3 decades, United States of America was driven, and still to a certain extent is driven, by this notion that what is good for us must be good for the rest of the world. This is a mentality that was central to many great powers that dominated our history, our world. The current challenge with the administration in Washington, D.C. is that America first should not be America only and America alone. That's a concern that many, many people who are related to the former establishment in European quarters, that's their fundamental concern. So we'll see what will happen. But as I mentioned yesterday, we are in the presence of massive change. These changes are happening anyway. Last year when I was here, we were talking about fixing a fractured world. We're no longer fixing that fractured world because the fractured world is no longer there. Something new has emerged, but we do not know what that new entails. So I think partly during this forum, we have been trying to understand the essence of that change and prepare ourselves to that, to its consequences. And my last word about Azerbaijan, I think that Azerbaijan in many ways have been preparing for this change by means of recovering its territorial integrity, establishing the foundations for regional self-ownership, establishing the foundations for this middle power rise philosophy, and in this region Azerbaijan is in a better position to act decisively now.
Very interesting indeed. Well, those issues will continue, those debates will rage on. This event is coming to a close, but the topics, of course, will not end. We'll continue to cover them on A News through our news and analysis output. We do thank you very much for staying with us and joining us as we've covered this incredible event here in Baku. From all of the A News faces that you see and from colleagues working hard behind the scenes that you don't, we wish you a very pleasant evening and thank you again for staying with us here at the Global Baku Forum.